How are we doing there, boys and girls? Manthieus here, and welcome to video 2 in our 4-part mini-series on how to get yourself up and running with TradeSkillMaster. In the last episode, we set ourselves up some groups, we looked at the different ways we can do it, and now we should have a setup something similar to this. We were using leatherworking for this example. We now have the armor kits in a group, we have some of the gear split down into different groups, and we've even gone as far as subcategorizing the different item levels of gear that we can make and making sure that everything's grouped up nice and neat and tidy. But this is all only so good and well, right? We've got the items in the groups, we've spent a bit of time doing this, but actually, what are we doing with those next? Well, the next logical thing many people try to do is apply some operations to those groups. Operations are basically considered them rules. They're rules for crafting, they're rules for selling, they're rules for buying. But there is something that we need to do before we get too deep into crafting these operations, is understanding price sources. This is one thing that TradeSkillMaster is very, very powerful at doing. It tracks crazy amounts of stuff. TradeSkillMaster knows all of the prices of all of the different materials in the game, and we can utilize the information that TradeSkillMaster already knows when we start making these operations. This will all start to make a lot more sense soon, trust me. But let's take a little look for a few minutes today at some of the price sources that TradeSkillMaster has available to us, because once we where did it go? Once we understand the price sources, everything will start fitting into place a little bit more so. So, what are price sources? Price sources are gold values that TradeSkillMaster comes up with to help us price or value an item in the game. Some of them are the same for everybody. There's a price source DB Market, one that's very, very well known by anybody that's used TradeSkillMaster. If these don't make sense to you, don't worry for now, we'll get to them. But things like DB Market price is the same for everybody. Everybody that plays on your realm will have the same DB market price for an item, but there are some price sources that are customized just to you. These are things like crafting and average buy. Everybody's crafting price for an item, everybody's average buy price for an item is going to be different. It's important to understand and distinguish between the ones that are sort of universal and the ones that are heavily customized. What are some common price sources then? What are we going to look at today? Well, DB Market is a very common one. This is the average price of an item over the last 2 weeks. We then have DB Region Market Average, which is the average price of an item over 14 days, but region-wide, often used for things like transmog, for example. We have a crafting price source, which is the total value of all of the items needed to make an item. Very, very powerful price source to use if you're playing around with professions. We have average buy. This is the average price that this is one of the custom ones, the average price that you have paid for any specific item. So those are just some common ones. Let's break down some of these common ones into a little bit more detail then. So DB market price. What is DB market price? What does it actually mean? You can see from the tooltips in game that you'll be displayed a market value for an item. This is the average price that item has been listed for on your auction house over the last 14 days. So this is on your specific realm. This means every server has their own different DB market price for a specific item. So it's a good indication to, well, what an item might sell for. And I put strong emphasis on the word might, because just because it was listed at that price on the auction house, 1, doesn't mean it sold, 2, doesn't mean that it would sell at that price. It's just an indication. So sometimes you might have to list your items at a cheaper price than the DB market to make them sell. If an item is really scarce all of a sudden, there's a lot of demand for it all of a sudden, the market price you might be able to sell things for higher than the DB market price. It does sometimes happen. But it's an indicator to the value of an item. Every item in the game that can be sold and traded has a DB market price, and you can see it in the tooltip under TSM Auction DB, and it is given the real world, easy to understand name of just market value. DB Region Market Average is a realm variation of that. It is actually the average of all of the DB market prices. This then becomes very good for comparing your realm against other realms. This isn't always super beneficial to most, but there are a couple of markets out there that use this a lot. I want to say things like transmog items. Transmog items definitely on some of the smaller realms, you may not even see them on your market that frequently. So the actual DB market price may be completely out of whack. Taking a look at the DB regional price for that item might be able to indicate a truer value for the item. And anybody that buys and sells pets on multiple realms is another one that will use the DB region market average, I would assume. When they go to buy those pets, they want to see if, well, can I sell this pet for more on average, depending on which realm you then choose to sell it. There's a couple of examples where you might use this. But as we've discussed at the beginning, DB market and DB region market, these are the ones that are the same for everybody. Everybody is going to have the exact same price is for these. Let's take a look at smart average buy price and average buy price then. This is one that is often a little bit misunderstood. Average buy price is pretty simple to understand, right? It's the average price that you have paid for any item. Often people look at this when they're like buying materials, for example. They'll buy a whole bunch of materials and they'll want to know what the average price they paid for those materials, because of course not all the time can you buy all of your materials at the exact same price. Especially if you're buying them in bulk, you might get a few of them cheap, you might get a few of them at a higher price. Your average buy price is kind of quite handy to know, but over time, as the markets change, as the value of these items change, that average buy price may no longer really be all that informative to you. That's where smart average buy price comes in. Smart average buy price is the average price you have paid for the items that you still own. So in the relation to materials, if over the period of a week you buy 1,000 herbs, but then you go and craft a bunch of potions, leaving you with only 500 herbs left, the smart average price would be how much you paid on average for the 500 herbs that you still have left. This can be very, very handy on fast turnaround things. Alchemy, when it comes to herbs, especially uses this smart average buy price a lot. A lot of crafters out there will use this price source to help them value or to help them gauge how much it costs them to create things. Very, very powerful price source that you should be aware of. Now, the big one for this video, and the one we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail, is crafting and map price. So this is one that's very, very common with people that play with professions. The crafting price is the sum total of all of the map prices for any given item. Map price is then the value, that is given to each material in the game. Me just telling you this is probably difficult to understand, so let's jump back into the game and we can show you this in action, and it will hopefully start to make a little bit more sense to you. So let's take a look real quickly at one that we've looked at previously, the drums. Drums of Deathly Ferocity. Now if you look at the tooltip, you can see that the TSM crafting price, or crafting cost, it indicates is 113 gold. This is made up of 1 times penumbra thread, which it values at 7 gold and 20 silver, 3 pieces of heavy desolate leather, which total up to 98 gold, and 3 pallid bones that totals 7 gold and 66 silver. You add all of those up and you get 113 gold. But what TradeSkillMaster is doing is it's working out the value of those materials first. Now, where is it getting these numbers from? One common thing I see very frequently with TSM is people complaining that the crafting price is wrong. This is usually because they haven't understood where the material prices are coming from. If I actually open the profession real quick, if you open your profession window, you'll see that you have 3 tabs across the top. You have crafting, gathering, and reports. If you hit reports, and then you go to materials, this is where we can actually see how TradeSkillMaster works out that material price. You can see there's a column here called map price. So let's see what was one of the materials we needed for our drums. Heavy desolate leather. Heavy desolate leather. So here we go. We can find heavy desolate leather, and you can see TradeSkillMaster seems to think it has a material price of 33 gold. Well, how is it working that out? We can click on it, and we can see here that TradeSkillMaster is doing another, often pretty large calculation to try and work out what the actual value should be of heavy desolate leather. Now, don't worry if you don't understand this for now. This will all start to make more sense soon, trust me. But what TradeSkillMaster is doing is it's taking into consideration a bunch of factors. It's looking at the market price, the DB market price like we discussed earlier for the item. It's looking at seeing, right, well, have I bought some of those materials? If I've bought them, what's my average buy price? If I've bought them, then maybe I should, you know, maybe look at using the price that I've paid for them rather than the market price. It's doing another whole big calculation behind the scenes to work out this material price. So often, if you've never bought any of the materials needed to craft an item, TradeSkillMaster will just default to the market price for those materials, which is often not necessarily 100% accurate. This is the nice thing about TradeSkillMaster. It becomes smarter the more you use it. The more you buy items, the more you craft things with, the closer to reality the numbers do become. And playing around and customizing some of these material prices can have a dramatic effect on the way the rest of the add-on works. But fundamentally, that is how TradeSkillMaster operates. It takes these price sources and it does some fancy calculations with them and spits out a number that you can then use in these operations. Crafting is going to be a big one that's going to be highlighted heavily in the next video, but that is pretty much price sources in a nutshell. One final thing, I will give you a link. The link will be in the description to this, is to the official TSM help document for price sources. This goes into a little bit more detail than what we've been able to cover in this video, because I don't want this video to be 5 hours long, on every single price source that TradeSkillMaster uses and just how it works out the numbers that it gives you. There's lots of them. You can see TSM crafting and the map price. They go into a bit of detail here. There's loads of them, so have a read through this. I actually have this page bookmarked and I reference back to this all the time, even though I've been using TradeSkillMaster for years at this point, because sometimes you just forget how something's worked out. But this is very, very handy. So there we go, boys and girls. That was price sources. Now that we understand a little bit more about the price sources, we can start to craft some of these operations that will go into finally making our TradeSkillMaster smart and allow us to do some funky stuff. So in the next video, we're going to start playing around with auctioning operations, crafting operations, and maybe a few others. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to give the video a like, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.